a lot of calls for some kind of ceasefire or deal. What are the prospects for some sort of deal?
Well, they didn't look very good last week, Seema, when Netanyahu made his speech that sort of seemed to cut the ground from under it. But a lot of people now in different capitals are saying, well, this deal is not dead and we need a pause. We need the IDF not to attack Rafah immediately and to see a plan for the evacuation of civilians. If we see that, then maybe we can get this potential deal back on track. That's what really this is all about, trying to persuade Israel to just hold off a little bit, see what else is possible.
And we know now footage has been released by the IDF about that special operation last night. Talk us through that.
Yeah, there's quite a series of dramatic images which have been released. I mean, a couple of things. One is this is a picture of the airstrike on one of the buildings next door to the building where the hostages were being held. Just a repeat of that particular airstrike. So what the IDF did is they hit both buildings, either side of it, and then you can see there the forces going in, and the different teams, 3 or 4 teams of 3 or 4 people. That's how you would normally do it. So go into the building by the street side entrance, hold the first floor probably, move to the second floor where the hostages were, fight their way in, fight their way out. And that's sort of classic behaviour. And the smoke that's coming from the other building, the airstrike was on this building, smoke coming from the other building. We don't know if that was an airstrike or an internal attack, but effectively they attacked buildings either side, then went into the building that they wanted in the way that you can see there, did that pretty efficiently, and then when they came out, they obviously blew that building up, the one that the hostages were held in, because presumably they thought that was a Hamas building as well. And so we've got some other pictures of that building completely collapsed. So that was the nature of the operation. From a special forces point of view, it was very successful, but it is said by Hamas that 67 people were killed, civilians were killed in the bombing. We don't know that that's accurate, but it's certainly plausible, and it would be odd if there were not civilians killed in the bombing. And this is something that's come through even more recently, of the devastation to those 3 houses that were involved. And I think this is the building that the hostages were held in, and they've completely collapsed it when they left.
Right. OK, yeah, extraordinary amount of civilian deaths as well. We're talking about a potential ground invasion into Rafah. The airstrikes have already started. When and if the offensive in Rafah does start in earnest, Michael, what do you think the impact will be on the other side of the border in Egypt? We've had a lot of concern about that and response from Egypt itself.
Yeah, the Rafah crossing is a very sensitive place. I mean, this war has gone through 3 phases in that respect. First of all, Gaza City, then Khan Yunis, and now Rafah. And Rafah is the most delicate of all of the areas because more people are hemmed into it. It's right on the Egyptian border, and it's sealed. I mean, the Egyptians have moved up to the border. They've sealed the crossing even more than they normally do. They've moved their own forces up to the border. However, it is said, we know that some of the tunnels which the Egyptians say don't now operate, do operate from the strip into Egypt. And it is said that about $5,000 or more will buy you, by some dubious means, a way of getting across the border. So the border isn't quite as porous as it's often made to seem. But for the, 1.5 million people or more who are now crammed into that area, the chances of escape are close to 0. So the Israelis are now talking about attacking Rafah city itself, not the crossing, which is quite a long way away, but moving into Rafah city and moving people out. Now, how they're going to do that, we don't know. But Netanyahu has always said there's a thing called the Philadelphia Corridor, which runs all the way up the border on both sides, and the Egyptians control the Philadelphia Corridor on their side. And Netanyahu has always said, from the very beginning, we have to have control of the Philadelphia Corridor. And so the idea of the IDF, as we're holding off before they get to the very border, is not credible. They will go, this is what they say, they will go right to the border, take control of the Philadelphia Corridor so that they can seal it, not the way the Egyptians say they seal it. And in that respect, I think they will carry forward to do that, but not for a little while yet. And in the meantime, before a week or 2 weeks goes by, before this offensive really begins, the world is trying to persuade the Israelis and Hamas to come to some sort of deal to forestall what will be the worst of the prospects that we've seen in Gaza City, Khan Yunis, now Rafah. This is the one that everybody would really, really like to avoid.
Yeah, and 1.5 million people trapped there.